What's going on, gamers? What's going on, Monster Hunter lovers? So, here we have right here 55 reviews up, right? And we're sitting at an 89 Metacritic. Capcom does it again, right? CapGOD, as you know, some people say, God tier. Yeah. But I expected that. And what I told people too, which is interesting, because we're gonna get into a lot of stuff here. We're gonna get into some technical details from Digital Foundry, looking at the PS5 and Series X comparison, seeing how good it is. And then we're gonna take a look at me, having a platinum in World. Also, I can't say I have a platinum in Rise because I played that on the Switch when that came out. But going here, let's go ahead and help people out with the times. So if you're in Los Angeles, you're gonna be able to play it at 9 o'clock. Me being over here in Texas is gonna be 11 o'clock since Los Angeles is 2 hours behind, and obviously you're in the East Coast, you're playing it right at midnight. Just to help you guys with the time zones real quick so you can know when to get in there and get started. So yeah, you will be able to play it um, somewhere around midnight in the east, hour behind, obviously over here in Texas where I'm at, and in California 9 o'clock. So that's pretty cool. As you see, it says the 27th right there, but obviously, closer to around that time, it'll be hitting midnight to hit the 28th. So you don't have to wait till the morning if you don't want to. I pre-ordered my copy just recently, so we're gonna get ready for that, y'all. Yeah, let's get crunk here, right? 89 meta, let's go, baby. Now going to my Twitter, just want to show y'all something. Look at my prediction. This is what I said, and my predictions are usually right. I said Monster Hunter Wilds will score 89 to 93 meta. My prediction usually spot on, and what ended up happening? We're sitting over here at an 89 meta, right? It's pretty much going to be around there. It may be able to hit 90. And just to show you guys something, here's my platinum because I don't feel like hooking up my capture card on my PlayStation. But yeah, what do you got to say, man? God of War? Platinum, 4.5%. You don't have to drama video I did. So Monster Hunter World, look at that, 1.1%. Even now, and yeah, don't worry about that, y'all. But anyways, 2018, as you see, I was one of the first people to get that. It was 0.1 at that time. Man, we fast forward from 2018 all the way to 2025. What, like 7 years later, and it's still at 1.1%. Those crowns are a nightmare, and anybody that played World knows that shit. It's annoying. I've been playing Monster Hunter since 3. Let me know, actually before that, but I mean when I really got into it, let me know what weapons you guys use. I'm a bonker over here. I'm a master bonker. We're hammer gods over here, you know what I mean? Playing no games with the hammer. So looking forward to that. But yeah, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Um, what weapon do you use and what platform are you going to be playing on? But at the end of the day, we can all play regardless because guess what? It's going to be cross-platform this time if you guys didn't know that. So there is no separate community. That means even people on the Xbox and PC community can play with the Japanese community over in Japan who mostly play on PlayStation. They'll be playing on PC as well too, but the Xbox community will be synced with those communities, which is cool because Sony tried to deny that last time. But that's not happening this time. So now going over here to Digital Foundry's tech review, let's get into this as we see PlayStation 5 and Series XS graphics and performance. Are we ready, y'all? Let's go.
Monster Hunter is back with a bang on current-gen consoles. Wilds, the latest series entry, features a seamless open world in a series first, plus plenty of visual bells and whistles, courtesy of Capcom's RE engine. So can the long-standing series hold up to current-gen pressure? And how do performance and image quality fare across PS5, Series X, and Series S?
So they're going to have 3 modes. That's pretty cool. And Capcom usually does a really good job at optimizing.
Let's first focus on the areas where Monster Hunter Wilds excels. Capcom's latest does a generally very good job of depicting wide open gameplay spaces, without too much pop-in, and plenty of flora and detailed static geometry. The crags and caves of the game's opening desert section are impressively ornate, and the game's forested second area shows off a lush, foliage-rich environment. I would say Wilds generally meets current-gen standards here, without hard polygonal edges or bits of low-res texture work that might betray adherence to earlier console hardware. We're looking at the PS5 code here in resolution mode, though we'll discuss the other modes and consoles later in this video. PS5 Pro though will have to wait for a special follow-up video coming out tomorrow focused exclusively on that console.
I
The
see.
game's iconic monster hunts are highlighted by unique-looking foes that you often fight in interesting arenas, like this flowery spider boss. These enemies are sometimes accentuated by interesting secondary animation, with tendrils and hairy bits responding physically to the creature's animations. Much of your time is spent trying to wear down these powerful creatures, so it's helpful that they look so eye-catching. That high level of care extends to the game's characters as well. NPCs have eye-catching designs with suitably sophisticated skin shading and hair rendering, which are highlighted in a surprising volume of well-animated cutscenes. These sequences often showcase exquisite action moments with really deft cutscene craft. The gameplay animation is also very effective. Enemy attacks are telegraphed effectively to the player, and player movement feels responsive and looks good. I
expect
especially
that.
enjoyed the animations of the game's mounts, which shift their weight convincingly as they sprint through game environments. A lot of the movement in more restricted spaces here is effectively out of player control, but at least it looks appealing. WILDS' lighting can also be pretty good at times. At its best, we get very effective large-scale light bounce and occlusion, which is most obvious during especially sunny times of day. Smaller scale detail is mostly treated with SSAO, but archways and large rock formations seem to be lit primarily using a baked GI technique, which is often effective. At times, the results can be quite striking, particularly in clear conditions. In its own element, I think WILDS generally looks good and often comports itself to a reasonable current-gen visual standard. But when you go back to prior series entries, the visual progression is more obvious. Monster Hunter World, the last major MT framework game, has comparatively basic environments with somewhat crude-looking models. Characters in particular are a huge step back from their more realistic counterparts in WILDS. Plus, World
Yeah, I see that.
generally features smaller environments than Wild, with smaller groups of enemies with less interesting behavior, and those environments are segmented into discrete playable chunks, unlike WILDS. Monster Hunter Rise is somewhat cruder still. This 2021 game was built on the more modern RE engine, but it was developed around the capabilities of the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
As a result, it looks more basic, with flatter environments and simpler terrain.
But I like
It's not
that
a
game.
bad looking game by any means, but it definitely feels like something closer to a 360 or PS3 title than World, even though I'm capturing it here on PS5. Relative to those earlier games, I think WILDS is a clear improvement, and shows the advantages of focusing on more advanced consoles, along with a more generously resourced development on a more modern engine. There are some areas where WILDS
Yeah, you can see that because like the environment is more massive and more detailed all at once. Like whereas on World, they were just trying to make the player design more realistic. So you would think it looks better, but it's not. But like overall, if you look at the environment detail and Wild, you can tell a huge difference here. I want to see what they're using though.
doesn't necessarily match expectations though. One of those areas is the game's overall lighting quality. The first thing that will stick out to a lot of players is just how subdued the game looks in most lighting conditions. If we take out a Lumiscope in Final Cut, it's obvious that Wild's brightness level is generally quite compressed, with lifted
Yeah.
blacks and suppressed
'Cause
highlights.
it's in a sand
This
place
can give
too.
it a very gray look, which doesn't really flatter the game to my eyes. In very bright, contrasty lighting conditions, this isn't as much of an issue, but a lot of the time Wilds has a gray cast, with blacks that are lifted considerably above pure black in the SDR Rec 709 color space. Weirdly, some of the game's weapons and armor don't seem to be reflecting light properly and have a very dark color relative to the rest of the scene in some areas, which just seems incorrect. There are some obvious lighting flaws on top of that grading issue. The game's GI and SSAO don't do a good job of effectively shadowing carpets of foliage in the jungle area, for instance. Small-scale environments, like the inside of this tent, aren't really lit plausibly in my opinion. Wider shots of more naturalistic environments with strong, direct lighting fare best, while more cramped, indirectly lit interiors can look somewhat dated.
A lot of people are not going to really care much about that, but I get what you mean. So let's go ahead and go to the comparisons.
Beyond any lighting quirks, I think the game's general image quality and performance metrics just aren't very good for a title like this. Wilds isn't necessarily pushing out the cutting edge when it comes to visual quality, but it runs like it does. Essentially, the game has three basic modes here. which interact with 2 visual toggles to produce 8 effective mode combinations, at least in my reading. Framerate has a toggle for a 60 FPS cap, resolution has a toggle for a 30 FPS cap, and balanced has a toggle for a 40 FPS cap, but only at 120 Hz output. And all modes can optionally output at 120 Hz on PS5. Essentially though, resolution, balanced, and framerate are the basic equivalents of the 30, 40, and 60 FPS modes in other games. Compared side by side, the framerate mode is clearly the worst off, with a rougher, more aliased image that doesn't hold up all that well on a 4K television set. The other 2 mode offerings are quite close to each other in relative quality. None of the modes are free of aliasing, but the framerate mode is clearly the odd man out here, with the other 2 options delivering reasonable enough results.
That's a bit
In
rough.
pixel count terms, the breakdown is pretty simple here. The resolution mode counted at approximately 1656p on average in my tests, balanced at about 1224p, and framerate at about 900p. WILDS appears to use AMD's FSR1 to upscale those resolutions to 4K.
FSR1? What the hell? No wonder. Bro, why are they using FSR1? Why can't they even at least use 2? But I mean, 4 is about to come out. I don't understand why they're not even using 3. Like, that's weird to me. FSR1? What the hell?
And there doesn't seem to be a temporal upsampling process. The resolution does vary somewhat though in all 3 modes, suggesting a dynamic resolution setup. For instance, the framerate mode counted as low as 720p for me, topping out at around 1080p. I don't think the anti-aliasing in question here does a very good job of cleaning up the final image, and FSR1 is a less than ideal upscaling solution. I wonder if FSR2 might have proven more effective ultimately on PS5 here. The visual setup, with no obvious signs of checkerboard rendering and a varying pixel count, is quite unlike other recent RE Engine titles, and not necessarily for the better. Beyond the resolution tweaks, volumetric lighting quality changes somewhat between the various modes. GI quality also appears to be affected, as the balanced and resolution modes get a bit of additional light bounce to supplement the baked GI, relative to the performance mode, which looks a bit less lively. The framerate mode has simplified screen space reflections and more aggressive LOD behavior as well. These modes do provide a pretty decent range of performance. On the top end, the framerate mode does an okay job of hitting 60 FPS, though there are frequent dips beneath. It tends to hover right at 60 with some dropped frames in the mix. Not exactly what you'd want from a performance mode necessarily, but it does feel better.
Yeah, I don't think this game is even close to being fully optimized too. I think over time they need to add in FSR2 at least. Because it doesn't make sense to choose one. That's weird.
With VRR. The resolution mode gets closer to hitting a locked frame rate, but again, it drops beneath its 30 FPS target in heavier scenes. Generally though, it is a more or less stable experience, outside of minor blips here and there. Balanced mode unfortunately is a little closer to the performance mode in typical play. When targeting a straight 40 FPS here with 120 Hz output, it suffers from relatively frequent drop frames, though it's usually hovering right around 40 FPS even when it does dip. Frame pacing at least is not an issue in either of these capped modes. You also have the option to play with any of these modes uncapped, though this doesn't work out exactly how you'd expect. The performance and balanced modes run very similarly to their capped counterparts, reaching a consistent frame rate level right around 60 FPS and 40 FPS respectively, though they can still experience a larger frame rate uplift in light content. The uncapped resolution mode does push noticeably higher frame rates than the capped console experience, however. Unfortunately, in my testing with VRR, LFC does not seem to engage with the balanced or resolution modes at 120 Hz output, so the game feels choppier than it should on VRR 120 Hz panels, especially when uncapped. This is an issue that Capcom really should fix for PS5 players. One pleasant surprise here though is that NPCs don't suffer from the same obnoxious pop-in issues we observed in Dragon's Dogma 2, though they do animate at reduced rates when far from the player. The reduced rate animation is also sometimes visible with distant enemies. This was an area of some concern after the issues Dragon's Dogma suffered, but the smaller town areas in Wilds likely don't raise the same CPU constraints that we saw in that title.
Hmm.
Ultimately, Monster Hunter Wilds is a good looking game, but I do have concerns about its performance on PS5 here. Image quality and performance metrics don't line up favorably with other current gen software, even compared to games that are pushing out the absolute state of the art. Performance mode in particular is of significant concern, with rough and imprecise low resolution visuals.
I'll be on PC. I ain't worried about that. I'm gonna be using no
With PS5 out
FSR1.
of the way, let's move on to Microsoft's current gen fare.
Okay.
Series X is very similar to the PS5 version visually, with basically identical visuals and similar pixel counts. I didn't spot any substantial differences in my comparisons across any of the three modes captured at 60Hz. That means a pretty rough looking performance mode with substantially more refined visuals in the balanced and quality modes that better suit a 4K display. Performance-wise, it's also basically the same story. Expect a generally solid 30 FPS resolution mode with slightly rougher performance and balanced modes. If we pair the PS5 and Series X up for a moment in their uncapped resolution configurations, they run very similarly with a slight PS5 advantage in these shots. If you're picking between PS5 and Series X, I probably wouldn't put much emphasis on their relative visual turnout here because the results seem quite similar. Image quality, performance, and visual settings are closely matched. The VRR support on Series X is a bit better though for the resolution and balanced modes, which may be worth considering if you have a 120Hz VRR display. Series S is a lot simpler than the other console machines. We get just one option here, a 30 FPS targeting mode, plus the customary unlocked and 120Hz toggles.
That makes sense.
Capcom clearly restricted gamers from high performance modes for a reason though, because the game looks quite a bit worse than the other consoles, even in their framerate modes. There are a number of visual cuts here. SSR is totally absent in my experience, with essentially no specular detail on bodies of water. Texture resolution also takes a big hit, with poor quality textures all over the game. Rendering resolution counts at 1080p or a bit below typically,
That
but
makes
the image
sense.
is much softer than the other consoles in their framerate modes. I think the S lacks the FSR and sharpening treatment the other consoles receive to try to improve image quality. The game also has 1080p UI, unlike the other consoles, which have 4K UI instead. Performance isn't great either. In its capped configuration, it suffers from frequent sub 30 FPS dips. These are often little periodic stumbles beneath 30, but can be more substantial and extended in some scenes. Monster hunting in the 25 FPS range is really not ideal, but that's often the run of play on Series S at the moment. Uncapping does little, as you might imagine. The same sub 30 FPS moments remain, and the game barely manages to pull above 30 FPS most of the time.
I expected that at launch. I think they'll smooth it out more over time. I'll be playing about 75 to 80 on my PC with like 1800p, high settings, all that DLSS. It's gonna be great. But hell, man. So we kind of get our idea here. This is what we're going to be getting at launch. For the most part, though, like I said, if you do balance mode, which I recommend for everyone if you're on console, it's going to be well. And remember, this is all going to be crossplay. I still find it weird if they're using FSR1. It's like, what the hell? But all in all, though, I mean, I'm very happy with the meta. 89. We know it's going to be really good. Let's see. We probably got some more reviews up here. We got 66 reviews, and we're still maintaining our 89 here, y'all. Like I said, we got some 10s here. But mostly, nines and 9.5s. IGN didn't hit it with the seven, right? Like 8 out of 10. But yeah, so we got the tech analysis, we got the reviews, we got our answers. And if you guys were worried in the beta about that one creature, Capcom does that in Monster Hunter games. It's not going to be like that. Trust me. You're going to be able to progress, learn the game. They're going to help you out big time at launch. I was even reading some reviews saying that they definitely help you out a lot, and they made this one more casual at the launch, so you'll be able to progress and be fine. And everything's all co-op from beginning to end. That's all there. But there are some features that people would like to be added in, like custom lobbies, being able to watch the same cutscenes in the story, which they don't have. But all in all, we're gonna have a good time as we usually do. Like I said, I'm always looking for some hardcore players, so hit me up in the comments and let me know what y'all think. And so we have the answers here for the PS5, the Series X, and as the Pro will get a separate version. Obviously, it'll be running better than these two. Um, So there we have it. All right, y'all. I'm ready to bonk when the game launches. Hammer time, baby. Hammer done time right here. And whatever other weapons y'all play, like I said, let me know what y'all play. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a great day.